Fully live, yes.
Live,
there we
right.
are. Okay, here we go. Ready?
All right.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm John from Silver Fox, and this is Ask Us Shit. He's
Matt from the Music Boutique.
and he is,
And our guest.
Andrew from Flowers by Brian.
and here we are.
Episode 6, Ask Us Shit with Andrew Flowers.
Andrew Flowers from Flowers by Brian is gracious enough to join us, and yes, of
Thanks
course.
for coming and hanging out for an evening. Yeah.
hanging out with us. And
7
talking some
o'clock
shit
on the live pod.
on the
Best
live
time.
pod.
It is, we're having the
So,
best time ever.
Yes, we are. We're having a great time. We've got a lot of really cool technical things happening and multi-camera shoots. We're going to have title-like stuff that doesn't happen normally on live pods. But it's happening here, and that's the way we roll. Right?
Listen, professionalism
It's the way we roll.
is the top shelf.
It's the top shelf. Yeah, that was good. Yeah. It's the top shelf.
I didn't say
I know. You didn't say No, you're right. You didn't say So, we're going to take your questions live. We've got a bunch of questions here. If you'd like to ask Andrew or Matt or myself, please feel free to DM us. We have a feed where we can do that, YouTube, TikTok. And I think we should just jump into it. So, Andrew, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and all that good stuff.
How'd you get here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Andrew from Flowers by Brian, as you know. I started in this industry as a kid, running around the basement of the Carlton and the Ohika Castle.
Born into it, right?
Right.
So you're Andrew. Who's Brian?
So Brian's my father.
Yes.
So
Yes.
definitely got the whole look of it my entire life. Seeing all these major setups and going to all these events and seeing how it's all done. And then in college, I worked for a bunch of high-end event planners, getting a little bit of knowledge and like that kind of other side of it. Seeing how these upper scale events run and flow and all of that, and really thinking through the designs of things, functionalities, how guests are actually interacting with the decor, and stuff like that, and brought that back to Flowers by Brian, and here I've been for the last couple of years.
And
here
here
I
you are.
am.
That's it.
Here you are. And here you are on the pod, and
I
the
love
person
it.
to speak
Yeah.
about it more than anything.
I was just gonna say, who better to lay it on
Who
us?
better?
Gotcha.
Who better? So, well, let's just jump into the questions here.
Because you are supposed to ask us shit.
You are supposed to ask.
So, actually, we are answering shit.
Yes, that could be the next pod. Answer
Next pod.
Ask us shit.
Ask
and
us
then
shit so we can answer
Or
shit.
we could just combine it like we're
Yeah,
doing.
I like
So, first question from Brittany is for Flowers related. What trends do you see 2025, 26, and moving forward?
That's a great question.
What are cool kids doing?
Yeah, it's such a different vibe than the last, 5 or 6 years of these very big and opulent things. Everyone wants bigger and bigger and bigger and more different. I find that, these coming years, it's simpler. It's every bride wants, candles, a couple bud vases, something that's really elegant, that does the trick without, giving the whole deck away,
Right.
So it's definitely a different vibe. Seeing a lot more King's tables, that's super popular these days, those longer, more intimate tables. Also color. We were talking a little bit beforehand.
Yeah. Tell us about that one bride.
Yeah, my Gen Z brides, they are open to anything, and that's the best part. There's no rules anymore with these weddings, and and that's one of my favorite parts is that bride who wants hot pink flowers on her table, she gets hot pink flowers on her table.
That's it. Yep.
Tradition be damned.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Tradition's out the window, and
Yeah.
I think that's the beauty of the 25, 26 years that anything goes.
Yes.
So.
Which is great, honestly, and that I mean to that advice, and for any part of the planning is decor is a huge part of it. Make it your own. Your personality and your style should be part of your wedding because it is your day, and you got a lot of options when you're planning your wedding, and so choose wisely, choose great vendors, which we only associate with great
Come on
vendors.
now. Come on now.
That's over here.
And I like the fact that you said kind of elegance is key. It doesn't necessarily have to be big and overdone
Yeah.
because classy is classy on any level.
Of course, and simple can still be elegant. Simple doesn't have to mean you just have a candle in the center of the table. Simple could also mean just a low hedge of white roses and some hydrangea. That's still very simple. It might feel opulent.
So simple and budget friendly aren't the same thing
No,
necessarily.
never. Because when you're going simple, you're working with, fewer flowers, you're going less with these bigger, crazier designs, more fuller arrangements,
Okay.
So simple can take on tons of words in the floral industry. I always say to my brides who are, being cautious of budget or being cautious of kind of those things, I say, it's not simple. You just like what you like and that's okay. And what we find for you, we're just going to be conscious of the budget.
Right.
That's it.
Right.
Doesn't have to mean small.
Which relates to our question here.
Yeah,
Peter.
I actually
Question
really like
two,
that.
to our technical director, Peter.
Question two.
Question two. So from Jess, how can I make the most of my wedding decor budget?
Yeah.
Look at that. How impressive
Oh, I
is
love
that?
that.
Look at that.
That is
Very
so
high task.
awesome, right?
To
I love that. Live pod. It's
maximize.
happening live.
Yeah, that's cool.
So how can I make the most of my wedding decor budget?
That's a great question. I feel like that is the biggest key with, budget conscious brides these days is how do I make the most of what I'm getting?
Yeah.
Your ceremony is only 30 minutes. Your cocktail hour is only an hour. You're spending the majority of time in the reception, right?
Yep.
So that's where I always suggest to my brides, that's where you focus your budget, in the reception. Put some beautiful centerpieces on the table, and if you want to reuse those centerpieces, let's put them down the aisle for the ceremony. And during cocktail hour, my team's
great.
there. We'll move them right back to the table, So there's ways around what you're getting and to make the most out of it.
Yeah.
Even my favorite thing is to reuse the girls' bouquets on the table for two. I make these bouquets that are packed with 50, 60 flowers sometimes, and they just go after the girls walk down the aisle.
Right,
Who knows where they
yeah,
go,
yeah.
So by putting them on like the sweetheart table or on the cake table, you're providing this second life to it. And I always say to the brides too, it's not like you're stealing the bouquet away from the girl. She could still take it home with her, but you're giving it a second home for the night, where at least you could fill up your room and you can get the most bang for your buck.
And it can be in some pictures.
Yeah, there you go.
Get the proof afterwards.
Right, what you live by,
A second home for the night.
Second
I love that.
home for-
A second home for the night for your
Yeah,
flowers.
there you
yeah,
go.
It's great. So
Gotta start somewhere, right?
you do, of course, and that's good. That's great. I mean, so I think I gotta throw a question to my co-host here.
Oh.
So some
Lay it on me.
people,
Yeah,
yeah, they do ask questions besides just for our guests. So this one, no name, just. I think because last week we spoke about that enormous screen you
We
have.
did have the big
Yes.
screen conversation. All right.
So why? So this is Matt. Question number one: why do I need a screen at my wedding? There you go. So
All right. Why do you
Explain,
need a screen
partner.
wedding? So I'll start with a disclaimer. You don't need anything at your wedding. All right. So need is a relative term. Okay. You need it? No, nobody needs any of the stuff I got. I have a complete luxury product. Moving forward, you are interested in a screen for a wedding. What are the uses? What can we do with that? So when I have some screens, I can just put pictures up, particularly if I'm working with Silver Fox, or I have a Zap Shot photographer. They're walking around the room, take pictures, and they get projected up on the big screen, which is really cool because I don't know if you guys know, but one of the big things that people like to do now is look at a screen and see pictures of their friends on it.
Yes.
So if you take
Heard of
that
Heard that.
experience, right, that everybody's doing right now, and you put it up in front of the room, it's just another hook for me to get people interested in what's going on the dance floor.
Absolutely.
So maybe you're not a dancer, right? Maybe you're not like the wildest person, but you'll stand with your drink on the side of the dance floor and you'll sit and you'll watch the screen because you want to see pictures of your friends. And then sure enough, this happens. Right? And then by the end of the party, I got you, right? We roped you in, you're on the dance floor with everybody else. So it's good as a hook. And then the second thing, to display content. Everybody loves content.
Display content.
So say you have, I don't know, a gorgeous floral bouquet that was outside in the garden during your ceremony,
Right.
and you want to take that and remember it and bring it inside to the ballroom. Now, it just so happened we got a really great picture of it. Let's put that up on the screen so that everybody can relive your creativity
Yes.
from your
love
ceremony.
I agree. That's
Yeah.
fabulous. Now, what if my phone is one of these, Matt? Look how OG we go here. Who even knows? I guarantee you.
It's like a James
No.
Bond phone.
This is like a James Bond
Yeah.
phone. Like how cool? By the way, this was my phone back in probably like 2002, maybe.
What? The
And
past?
yes, like this was called the Samsung Juke, which by the way, right now I probably could get like $10,000 for. But seriously, like how cool? It's like, hey, let me just take the call. Like you're not pulling out some massive device. Now you can show photos on it. You
Yeah.
can't get content on it. Pretty much can't do anything.
Well, when it was
except-
buried next to a mastodon bone, how did you find it?
Right, I know. Yeah, well played, partner. Yes.
From 2002, I was just born.
Yes, I know.
Some of us
You were
were.
barely legal. You were barely legal. So,
But while we're talking about you, John, I want to ask you a question. A question came in, question number 7. Where did the name Silver Fox come from?
Yes.
How do you name a photography company Silver Fox?
yes, very close to my heart. So my grandfather was a wedding photographer throughout the 50s and 60s. in the Bronx, and his sort of nickname from an early age, because he was sort of silver early, was the Silver Fox. And so I grew up, and cameras were obviously everywhere, and I was his first grandson. So it was kind of in my DNA. And, he passed in 91 and 92. I opened the company, and I was like, there's only one name.
No-brainer.
There's only one thing that this can be. And if you do come down to the studio, I'd actually have like a little shrine set up with his photo, which is, it's really a very special thing to me. Now that I'm getting older,
you're not quite there yet.
It's gonna start happening.
I was going to say, it's not fair to call you.
It's going to start happening.
Yeah.
So, and then it'll just be like, oh, he's the guy that, obviously, Silver Fox. Let's just look at the guy,
That was pretty clever, though. You're kind of growing into your own
I'm
name.
growing into it, yes. I went with a lot of foresight, is what I did. I said, I can grow into this as long as I stay in business for 30 plus years. So you guys, your dad started the company when?
1989. So with 30, we're celebrating our 30, coming up on our 38th year.
30? Wow.
Yeah.
That is
Crazy.
awesome. I mean, seriously, can you, seriously. Some vendors I give them this deposit, do I know, 38 year, you know you're in very, very good hands. Rolling up onto another question here for Andrew. So, question number 3 for the titler. Mm-hmm. What are some tips for newly engaged couples and brides that you'd like to give?
Yeah, I think there's so many, and as I was saying to you guys in the beginning of this, everyone I know and their mother are getting married right now. Everyone my age is getting married. I see too many people going through this process, and there's a lot of misinformation, lack of information, and so I always say to everyone, know what you're getting, know exactly what you're getting, see a picture, see a size, know what flowers are going into the piece. Too many times I have a bride come up to me and she's like, I got another floral proposal. They told me I'm gonna have some peaches and pinks. I said, okay, great, what flowers? I don't know.
I don't know.
But that makes a difference,
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, I would say my biggest tip is know exactly what you're getting, and go with someone you trust. Go with someone that is going to execute the vision. I think the hardest part of decor, and especially from the designer side of it, is getting the vision and getting to execute the vision.
Sure.
It's really important that you trust that person. That you can feel comfortable a year out giving that person money and saying, I know in a year from now you're going to do a beautiful job. I know you could get the vision. I may not know exactly what it's going to look like, but I have an idea that it's going to look like what I want.
At least you know the name of everything.
Right,
Exactly.
At the very least.
Yeah, at very least you know what color it's going to be and what it's called. Sure.
We always try on every proposal. I put exactly what flowers are going to be put in the arrangement, down to the color, the shade, the name. It matters.
Of course it does, and I'm sure they all have different price points, and it's a dandelion, which I'm sure you don't put in flowers.
Dandelions.
It's the first thing that came to mind.
No, my daughter makes dandelion bouquets,
Yes.
so it's not unheard of. Is the point that I want to make there? Yeah.
Oh, live question. A live question rolled in. Okay, so a couple somebody asked. His necklace is awesome. Where'd he get it? Okay, yeah.
It's an anniversary gift.
Yes.
Shout out to Noah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Noah, big ups. We were just talking about that earlier. I'm going to need some gold chains, a big money thing.
Yep.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
So I just have profile names here. So the RK with a bunch of numbers. What are your favorite flowers?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yes.
That is a really good question.
Yeah, I actually get that question a lot, and I always struggle on the answer because I see 50 varieties in a given day just walking through the shop. So for me, it's so hard to pick. But believe it or not, my favorite flower is it's called a billy ball. It's a yellow pollen looking thing, and it's just on a stick. That's it.
Right.
It's simple. It's to the point. When you add it into an arrangement, you see it, you know what it is.
Wow.
It's a certain vibe.
Stands out.
Yeah, and then of course there's the peony, which is the classic favorite of everyone.
Right.
To me, there's nothing better than a peony. The smell, the look of it, the colors it comes in. They even make these gorgeous coral ones that slowly fade the color out as they slowly die. And throughout the wedding, as they bloom open, it slowly fades from corally to a peach to a white. They're gorgeous.
Right.
Gorgeous.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Questions are pouring in here. So we've got Noah, best florist in the industry. They love you.
Thank you.
What's your favorite floral style?
Yeah. Oh, that's another good question.
A floral style.
Yeah, that's That's tough because I really will say we specialize in everything. We do everything from modern to contemporary to garden to whimsical to I'm putting potted plants on the table next week. So
Oh wow.
yeah. So I would say everything. My personal favorite is probably the garden style. I love working with greeneries, different textures, different types. I feel with greenery you get the most texture and eye appeal to an arrangement because you're able to play with these textures all within the same color palette.
Right.
And then when you add in those couple other flowers, whether it's a peony or a dandelion even,
Right, yeah.
it makes them look that much better, so definitely I would say the garden
Do
style.
you actually use dandelions?
No.
I was going to say.
Well, now just
I had to give you one over
Yeah,
there.
yeah, sure. I mean,
from the
shouldn't have asked.
layperson's perspective, garden doesn't necessarily mean it has to be outside, right? You can do a
No.
garden inside of a building.
The most beautiful garden wedding I ever did was at the Plaza Hotel, a space that's traditionally not a garden. We
Humble
put,
brag.
Yeah,
Okay.
humble brag there.
So I'm at the plaza. All
I was at the plaza.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
But we put giant flowers and a huge hedge of greens and flowers across the stage. And I walked into the room. You walk in under a greenery gazebo. Like it just
Cool.
was. You can create the vibe of anything anywhere, and that's really the beauty of what I do and why I love it so much. Is
Right.
because it doesn't matter where I am or what I'm doing. I know I can transform that space in what way or shape or form that you want it to be.
Okay.
That's really
Yeah.
the beauty of it. So customized.
So customized.
Yeah.
So this is a question from Heather, question number 4, which I think we all get asked this question.
Yeah, I was gonna say we might have to take
Yeah,
turns on this one too. Yeah.
Why are wedding flowers so expensive?
Why does everything cost money?
Yes, my goodness. Yeah, so
Yeah. That is the question I will say I get probably the most in a given
Yeah.
day, and I get it. Listen, I'm the one giving you the price. I get it. It's expensive. But at the end of the day, you're not just dealing with me or my team of, designers or coordinators or florists or production staff. You're also dealing with the farms down in Ecuador, in Colombia, in Holland, over in California. You're paying these people to plant the seed in the ground, cultivate that seed for months upon months,
Yeah.
then cut it
Yeah.
from the ground, package it. After
Properly.
they package it, right,
Yeah.
properly, more importantly, then they have to ship it to us, whether that's by plane, whether that's by truck. They got to get it to us. Then it goes into my refrigerator, comes back out, gets conditioned. The leaves have to be stripped off. It has to be unpacked, put into buckets.
Okay.
Then it has to be separated for each wedding. Then it has to be put out and then actually made into the arrangement where each flower is hand put in. So
Right.
it's labor
Yeah,
intensive.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not easy. Sometimes when we're dealing with these weddings, I'm ordering the flowers 2-3 weeks ahead of time. I got to get it, in transit by a week before the wedding.
Right. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I would say you're definitely your biggest with flowers. At least the reason they're so expensive is it's just the labor behind it.
Yes.
Yeah, and I'm
Yes.
sure you guys could relate to that.
yes, Matt. What about you? Why are you so damn?
Why am I so damn expensive?
Right where you should be, just like we are.
It's perfectly priced in the industry.
Perfectly priced.
Because, but I actually had mentioned this in a previous live pod. It's my price structure where I pay my guys.
Yeah.
If you I'm sure you have staff also, and I know you do, John.
Yep.
That if you pay somebody more than they think they should get, they perform better than they usually would.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So I pay my guys great, and I pay them on time. I pay them right away. They earn every penny, and the talent breeds talent.
Of course.
The good guys attract other good people to work with, and everybody leaves ecstatic and that the job was well done. So
Yeah.
that's the mission there. So why am I more costly? Because our payroll is what
Right.
it is,
Yeah.
and it's worth every penny in my opinion.
Absolutely.
People are everything, and I will
So,
John.
yeah,
Well,
lay it
no.
on.
Listen, A players.
Players.
Want to play with A players. Like if you are somebody who's at the top of your game and you're great, you want to have other people that are at the top of their game.
Yes.
And A players want to be paid accordingly, and I think that really. And so, and I'm not saying that B and C photographers or whatever aren't good, but do you want good or do you want like great, amazing? Because
Yeah.
you get to do this once.
Yeah.
And you if you just want good and like, that's fine, okay, then we're all probably not for you,
Right.
But I think, at the end of the day, it comes down to just, obviously, in some instances, products and things you've got to put together, and I didn't realize that you literally, like, every single flower had to be conditioned.
But
By the way,
how else would it happen? Yeah.
I get the thing about just cleaning the buckets to just put the flowers in and then filling them and dumping them and
Yes.
filling them and dumping them. It's crazy.
Well, once you say it, it makes perfect sense, but you never think of how the flower got all the way up on
Yeah.
the top of the ladder. Like,
How did
somebody
that flower,
climbed up there
right,
and put it
right,
there. Yeah.
right,
It's
absolutely,
Don't.
absolutely.
Don't.
Yeah.
So we got another question coming in here.
Live pod.
Who is your most high-profile client?
Ooh.
Well, you dropped the Plaza name,
did
so
drop
all
the
right.
Plaza, that probably is like, hey, well, you say Plaza.
While we're talking about
Yeah.
so expensive, tell me.
Yeah. So we actually did. I would say probably this is our biggest client. Was we did Patti LaBelle's 80th birthday party last spring. That was a lot of
Cool.
fun. Yeah, that was like a once in a lifetime kind of
Sure.
event. You know, really it was just sensational from the colors and the flowers she chose, and it just really was an unforgettable event for sure.
You played a little Patti LaBelle, I'm sure, in your day,
I
right?
mean, she's made appearances
Yeah,
at
right?
gigs, absolutely. Yeah.
You know, just, you know, I don't know if she's on the current playlist for some weddings, but
I did have to do my research on this. I'm not gonna lie.
right, yes,
To the discerning client,
To the discerning client,
it's always
yes.
appreciated
Right.
when Patty shows up.
yes,
Yeah, right.
yes, exactly. All right, so okay, we'll bounce around here because I. Feel
Oh well,
like-
you know what? Here, why don't you go next?
Yes,
All right. So,
okay.
question number 8 for
Great.
to those who
great question.
are helping us out from Jake. This applies to my life too, and I'm
Yes.
sure some people out there are going to relate. My shot list for photography will have family members who can't stand each other. How do you handle this?
I try to broker peace. No. We're like, come on, let's just all get together and hug.
Can't we all just get along?
That's not what happens at all. No, although I wish it would. So listen, beforehand, a lot of planning goes into what we do. Details matter, shot lists matter.
Yeah.
And one of the things we will ask specifically is, obviously, if, is everybody together? And if there are divorces or other family issues, are they amicable? Do they feel like, and very often it will be yes, but there are times when it's no. These two people effing hate each other. They can't even be in the room together. So
Yeah,
we're not gonna. Yeah.
How do we get that picture then?
Yeah. Well, no. Well, you don't. If they don't want to be together, then they don't want to be together.
That's it.
So there are instances where it will just be like, hey, parents are like, my parents can't be for. I mean, and I feel as a parent, like you should be able to put some certain things aside
For your children.
But I can't sit there and sort of try to convince them.
Yeah, you don't do therapy and
no, we
photography
don't
on
do
the same
therapy
day?
and
I mean,
although
I feel like we're all half therapists.
Right, we all are kind of half that, especially our photographers. But
Oh, yeah.
so there are instances where, and listen, I feel also, and we've had this happen where the day of, we've had literally on the shot list, it says they don't get along, and then the day of, they're like, hey, you know what? We want to get a picture with the bride. And it's the parents, so like you're happy to see that. And so sometimes it just takes the day of that emotional moment to make people realize the bigger picture, which is like, hey, life is short. We're all like here for a certain period of time, and let's make the most of it. And taking a picture together for 2 seconds is not the end of the day. So
I feel like weddings as a whole bring out the worst in people, but it also brings out the best.
Yes.
It really
Yes,
does, and
for
you
sure.
see a lot of that, subside.
For sure, yeah.
Well, and then just jumping on top of that, do you ever make edits after the fact, like in a post-production?
Yes.
Like, hey, can you please put mom next to me and dad on the other side? And
We've had both done. Yes, we've had people ask, can you add somebody to the photo? Which obviously in instances, yes. But more often, can you please take this person out of the photo? Which,
always put boyfriends or
yes,
girlfriends on the end.
I've
I've actually coached people through that a couple times.
I've had instances where bridal party members were taken out of like every picture in the wedding because of obviously they did something bad, and I'm always so curious. I'm like, what did they do? I just need to know, like, for you being removed from every photo.
I want enthusiasm during
Yeah,
the
like
editing.
you
Yeah.
can't be in any picture. Like you must have. There's a short list of things that you could have done to be on that.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Because
To get taken out of everything.
You just gotta go. You gotta go.
Deleted
Album,
from the memories.
yeah. And by the way, when you see it, you wouldn't even know the person was there. We do sort of like a digital rub out.
Well, we
you
were
know?
saying professionalism, right? So
Professionalism,
we
yes.
can professional stuff.
We're like the
somebody right
digital
out of this,
mafia.
yeah.
You just next thing
Just
you know, the
gone.
person's gone.
DUN, son.
Yes.
Gone.
Okay. So, which venue, Andrew, presents the biggest challenge and why? And
Is that
yeah.
that's a
So
an email
this is yeah. So I don't know. It could be for flowers. It could be for any of us. So let's
Okay.
we'll start with you, Andrew, and then because which venue would present biggest challenge?
I mean, anything with a loading dock. Anything that I got to go up, 30, 70, 80, 90 elevator floors. Even when it's steps and it's 3 floors. Some of these centerpieces are 300, 400, 500 pounds, and you can only carry them. You can't put them on a cart. They break if you put it on a cart.
Oh, wow.
So you're trooping these things in, and sometimes in these venues, you have to go up, 3, 4 flights of steps to get that arrangement up there, Sometimes I'm dealing with decor that doesn't fit in an elevator. I was in the city once. I had to carry up these huge trees. They were 12 feet tall, 6 or 7 flights.
Right.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
So I will say I would say there's a lot. I think that's the beauty of every space, is that there's challenges and their benefits, and I feel like you guys could relate to that.
Yeah,
is that
sure.
Every space is unique, down from the ballroom to even the back end where we, load in our stuff. Each one is unique, and you have your own set of rules and regulations and stuff like that. And so I don't know if I have a favorite or a least favorite, but I definitely would say it's
There are
always
challenging ones. We don't want to hang in about to drive. Like, this place sucks.
Right.
Yeah. There are places, and they obviously they probably know themselves that loading is difficult. What about you, partner? What do you?
To jump in, for sure, places without elevators or where I'm not allowed to use the elevator.
Yes.
Because there is some venues where they say, hey, the DJ's load in through the back, and there's a staircase like this, and it's made out of metal, and it's also snowing and icy, and yes, none of my speakers weigh nothing.
Right.
So everything to lug it up the steps is for real. Matter of fact, that kind of makes me think of our live pod promo for this week.
Oh, our live pod.
So if you stay to the end, you get the live pod promo.
This guy is like a pro.
But I'm good.
You are. You're getting good at this, man.
Listen,
live
I'm just
pod
saying,
promo.
I did wear my collared shirt.
Yes, live pod promo. Hang around to the end.
Yeah, hang on to the end.
Each
Get
of
live
us has
pod
a little
promo. But
something.
I might give mine away a little bit because part of my live pod promo has to do with it is venue specific, because there's some places where, for instance, if I was going to make a promo for my big screen, there is some places where I cannot get it into the building.
Can't do it.
All right, so, and actually more specifically, there's some rooms in certain venues that I just can't get it into that particular room.
Okay,
Yeah,
fair question. So asking us presented biggest challenges like where, honestly, we're photographers, so,
if there's a door,
loading.
probably
we get,
all right.
Now, gear's heavy, and my videographer's out there, like Angelo would be like, "Yo, are you kidding me? The stuff I bring in," and he does bring a crazy amount of. But no, honestly, like when we get there, you guys have usually set up an amazing setup, and you're usually, we come in and you guys are sweating, and we're like, "Hey, is the room ready for shots yet?" And the bride and groom come in, and we're just like, "Oh," But meanwhile, we've worked up to that point.
I was
probably
going to
8
say,
hours.
usually
so.
you've already had a few more
Yes.
hours in than me, and I have to say something like, "So, how's everybody's attitude?" "Oh, they're sweethearts. We're having a great time."
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, Stacy, what do you do when you have to deal with bridezillas? You go.
No such thing.
I didn't even know. What is that?
No
What is
such
that?
thing, a
What is it?
bridezilla.
Bridezilla, yes. We've
So-
all had them.
Listening, I guess, is the short answer to that. Okay, if you have someone who's either upset with you or are they ever upset with us? No, they're never upset with us particularly, but something else happened. It's either a micromanaging situation or it's something where something happened and they're not thrilled with the outcome of how something was set up or how something was put together or where their flow went. It's usually never the photographers, particularly Silver Fox. Yeah, flowers are completely enamored by. So we'll say if a family member upset a bride, you listen and whatever the answer is, it's yes.
Right.
So
Whatever the question is.
whatever the question is, whatever they want to have
Yes.
switched or adjusted or made better, yes, and right away, and how fast can I do it? And so how do you do it? Appeasing.
Yes.
Yeah,
Andrew.
And on the flip of that, I have the opposite problem, right? It's day of. I can't appease them. What's there is there.
Right.
I can only do so much.
Right. True.
I always
Yes.
say it's the worst part of my job. What I got is what I got.
Right.
I will say a lot of times when you're dealing with a bridezilla, and I hate to even use that term because I feel like, yes, back 10, 15 years ago, you had a lot more of those. Now it's just, brides who want it this specific or particular way, I think is the best way to say it nowadays.
I agree.
And especially with what I do, it's so customized so that, if that bride wants that style exactly like that picture, it better look like that picture.
Right.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
A lot of times you can also combat it ahead of time. You just give them all the information. You let them know flowers are in fabric. You can't just get a color swatch and say, this is the color I want.
Yeah.
Things like that. So it's all about giving them, how I was saying earlier, it's all about giving them all the information. They're just confused. They're not crazy or they're not bridezillas. They're just confused.
Yes. We never have bridezillas. That's my answer.
Yeah.
Well, actually, we do have a very small, very tiny, and honestly, we can usually see it coming. But and they don't pick us. But it's about communication because they're like to Matt's point, there will be things that happen during the day that
life
set
is
somebody
life.
off. And what we try to just tell them, because we're really closely, I mean, we're like this the day of the wedding, and we try to just say, hey, listen, this is your day, and obviously something didn't go the way you wanted to, but kind of what you make of it moving forward is what we have to kind of look at, because we want to, you're here to have a great time, you're celebrating your love for one another, and whatever happened, we got to put it behind us. And so that's kind of, I think, really all you can do. But some people just kind of get stuck, and I mean, we do see it in the photos at times. You can but
scowl.
yeah. So then we just Photoshop it.
Yeah,
Look how happy they were.
Put your big old eyeballs
My
right in there.
goodness!
Yeah.
Wow, that was amazing. Curtis, okay, these are just flying in, man. We've got more live questions.
People
do
love
you
flowers.
anticipate?
Yeah.
Do you anticipate a tariff impact?
Yeah, great question. I've been hearing that question daily for the past couple of months, and I understand the confusion around it. There's a lot of misinformation, lack of information about these tariffs. At the end of the day, they're still in the air. And I always say, with my brides, you are so lucky with us that we deal with farms in 15 to 20 different countries. So if I can't get that rose from Ecuador, I'll go to Colombia. I'll go get it from there. If I can't get it from there, I go here, I go there, and we're able to combat it to a certain extent. And also too, on these flowers and these fresh goods, the way it's going right now, it seems like it's not going to impact us too heavily.
Okay.
Who am I to speculate? But at the end of the day, it is what it is, and it's a challenge that comes up. But that's why it's also important to book your wedding flowers ahead of time.
Yes.
I'm never going to turn to a bride and say, oh, there you go, tariffs went up, 200%, give me 200% more. I can't do that. You already signed a contract with me.
Right.
So even if I have to pay an extra 20 cents, 50 cents, $1 a flower, it is what it is.
Yeah. And I think that practice is, it doesn't really affect us, tariffs as much,
Well, I actually just had a DJ story about the tariff situation. Yeah, it has remedied
You
itself
imported a
since then.
DJ?
My speakers are from Italy. Yeah, RCF.
Oh, really?
RCF is an Italian speaker provider. Yeah,
Okay,
they make
all right.
there's two different kinds of speakers you can get as mobile entertainment. You can either get plastic, which is lighter, less expensive, and more durable, all the things that plastic does, or you can get wood speakers, like we have, and birchwood speakers. So wood vibrates differently than plastic. It's a more warm, room-filling sound, and that's what we like to have.
Yes.
It's a more classy way to do things, right? Elegant, right? So it's a prettier system, but yes, they're handmade in Italy. And when I went to, somebody needed to get a part for it, and they weren't able to, so they asked to borrow one of mine. We had the same system, and I let him borrow it. Of course, you have the stuff, because it was going to take him 8 weeks, theoretically, till they put it on the boat to get here, because there was a work stoppage at the plant, because they weren't sure how the tariffs were going to work out.
Right.
So, fast forward, it's all remedied now, and the speakers are pulling in, but for a minute, he wasn't sure. He needed a bar speaker.
There you go. I personally don't think we should have any tariffs on Italy. I mean, I'm just very partial.
Well, how else will we
I'm
get
married to an
delicious
Italian girl,
pasta?
and I feel just like Italians should just get a pass.
And we're big on our coffee
I mean,
espresso in this building.
Yeah, we are. We are big on it. We have Italian beans that we use when we grind them. Andrew will have a nice espresso afterwards. But yes,
and fresh beans did just come in.
And
So
the
if you
wine,
are making an
come on,
appointment,
just give the Italians a pass. You know what I mean? Just,
you know what? I'll go get everything. What do you make me a list?
I'll make you a
John
list.
will fly over.
I will make you a list.
And we'll come back with some speakers, some coffee, a little bit of vino.
How are we doing? Okay, so for those of you who are just joining us, as we are winding over 30 minutes, 33 minutes here.
Time flies when
Time flies when you're having fun.
Right.
And a lot of live questions here. Welcome to Ask Us Shit. We are with Andrew Flowers from Flowers by Brian, and we do have a few questions left here. Matt, I'm going to throw this one to you because this is a big one here.
Lay it on me, buddy.
I'm going to lay it on you. Is Matt question number 3? That is DJ versus band, the ultimate rivalry. Let's talk about it.
Obviously, I'm extremely biased on the subject.
I think you would.
Okay, as we'll get to some of your bias about it in a little bit. All right, yeah. The next question will be for Brian and his biases.
Yes.
Right? So, a DJ versus a band. You spoke earlier about this Gen Z. and
course.
throwing tradition to the wind, right? Current brides, I find, like to hear songs the way the song is sung on the radio, or they don't want to hear someone trying to sing like Beyonce. They want to hear Beyonce. And then say you have the most talented band in the whole wide world, and the singer sounds pretty close to Beyonce. You know who she doesn't sound like? Jay-Z. All right?
Right.
So
Fair.
either
Fair
way,
point.
maybe they'll get 2 or 3 of them spot on dead right, but not the whole night, not 4 hours worth of music, not the 80 songs that I was going to play in the 4 hours. And the brides just like to hear the music the way they like to hear it. My in-between is, say you have your parents in there, it's a little bit more traditional mindset going into the wedding entertainment. We can add live musical instruments to the DJ so that mom and dad get the live feel. They have a percussionist, a guitarist, a saxophonist. So it feels like there's a band playing, but in the back of your mind, the song still sounds the way that it's supposed to sound.
Right.
So that's how I do that dance. There's some very talented bands out there, and if you love a good band, we're gonna have a band in here eventually.
We are.
I don't need a black eye when I leave the live pod.
No black eyes.
We respect the bands, we respect the talent and the work that goes into it, and the rehearsals on and on and on. However, book a DJ.
All right, more questions coming in here for
Wait, I want to talk about Brian's biases.
Andrew's.
I'm sorry. Yeah,
Brian's is down.
Yeah, Brian. Yeah.
His biases.
Yeah. So
He's got live questions coming in right now.
Oh, you want to do a live question first?
I've got a couple here. Yes.
Oh, all right, fine.
Yeah.
Love it.
So,
It is ask a shit, so someone's asking
if
us
you're
shit.
asking us shit, we
I
can't
love
just
it.
go to these. I mean,
gotta answer
we
shit.
do appreciate you sending them in earlier, but it's a live pod.
It is a live
This
pod.
is the way we roll, man. And so you're going to send in questions, and we're going to ask them, and you're not going to get like prefab answers. All right.
No, this is real.
Curtis, I'm planning a summer wedding with flowers. Hold up best in the heat, and how do they get maintained? I'm sure they get maintained. Yes,
Great
question.
Absolutely. Another really hard part about flowers is temperature. These are fresh products we're dealing with. I have, outside of a refrigerator and the beating sun, that arrangement only has a couple hours out of it.
Sure.
It doesn't have a day out of it. So even in the winter, same thing. Like flowers freeze just as quickly as they can, die in the heat and wilt.
Right. Huh.
Okay. So
Interesting.
it's definitely tricky, but it's about going with a florist who knows how to combat the heat, about watering the arrangements. We wait, to put out the arrangements, for
the last possible second, right?
Last possible
Yeah.
second. I have refrigerated trucks for a reason. They
Right.
stay on there, they get nice and cold, and we pop them out. That's why a lot of times during the summer, I limit how much I reuse those centerpieces, like I was mentioning earlier, outside, because you have to remember those centerpieces are going back inside for another 4 hours. So if they're going to sit outside in the heat for 2 hours and then go back onto the table, I can't guarantee you it's going to be as fresh as the other pieces in the room that weren't outside, know. But we can combat it. We water it. We keep it as cold as we can. In some venues we're able to leave the pieces inside just until the guests walk out. We make everything an Oasis, which is a floral foam that holds water.
Okay.
So that helps a lot with
Right.
keeping all the stems hydrated.
Is that green looking stuff?
That green stuff that's fun to play with,
Called- what's it called?
Oasis.
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 A great name.
Right.
Just I call green spongy stuff.
Yeah.
That works.
And I
too.
definitely picked it up and
Yeah, but it kind of is like you can kind of
you
like
can
if you were
mold
a
it,
kid,
play
you're
with
like,
it.
oh, this is awesome. Yeah.
Totally.
I think this segues into question number 6, and also another question. So this is a big question I'm sure you get, which is, what are your thoughts on silk flowers? Do you offer them? Maria asked this question, so big question here. Kind of saved it towards the end. So
Yeah, totally. So, I also hear a lot about silk flowers. We are a predominantly fresh floral company. It's just our, mindset and our logic. It is it's a novelty. Fresh flowers for a wedding, it's a luxury good. You can absolutely get silk flowers, but you're losing that smell. You're losing the ability for sometimes if you're guests to take it home with them. You're losing a lot of those, novelties that you get around fresh flowers.
Yeah.
And the truth is, with these silk flowers, I've seen silk flowers from other companies that are, dirty upon dirty, and they're brown instead of white.
Yeah.
But you know what? It works, and if that's what works for you, that's what works for you. I embellish with silk. Like I'll put in, a little extra silk around the top of an arrangement to get it to look a little more dramatic. Or, if you want something pretty on the staircase, but you don't want to pay an arm and a leg, I'll throw a couple silk, flowers on
Right.
it. But
Right.
for centerpieces and stuff like that, bouquets especially, that you're holding this thing, you're with this thing 12
Yeah.
hours.
Yeah.
Some of these things, in my opinion, should be fresh.
Yes,
It's a novelty of it.
Yes. No, I agree. I mean, then do they get take? It says here, can they take them home?
That's a great question.
Right,
Yeah.
Like-
With my flowers, I beg. I literally will tell my clients, I beg you, please take home every flower.
Right.
Like, please.
Yeah.
They come back. They go right in my dumpster. So
Yeah,
whether
yeah,
I do 5 pickups that week for the dumpster or you take them home, I'd rather you take them home and enjoy them for an extra week than me just throw them in the dumpster and have
Right.
a garbage bin pick
Right.
up.
Right.
So
Exactly. Yeah. No,
definitely
that-
say that's the best part. And then with silk, it depends on the company, but if you're using silk, it's because it's a more cost-effective option, which means it's being reused, 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 times.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, I mean, we can definitely see the difference. Obviously,
Mhm.
it's and there's that when you come into a room that is
Right.
just filled with flowers. I mean, we all know that
It
smell.
smells like a
And
garden.
it's just
Yeah, like we were talking about
wow,
before.
Yeah.
And so then, and a wedding is such a, there's so many senses that are engaged. All of them are engaged, and so smell is like the one thing when you're walking as a guest into a ballroom, and you're like, oh my God, look at this, look at these centerpieces, look at and it's like, wow,
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
Well, and it's that. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
No,
go ahead.
yeah, but I think that's a great point too. Is that I think a wedding as a whole is to engage the senses, and that's what we all
Yes.
do.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Yeah, like the music, you engage the ears, the nose, you have the eyes over there. So it's like you really get this full encompassment with a wedding that you really have to execute, and that's where with these Gen Z brides who are throwing tradition out the window. You still have to execute those 5 points. You still need to have something beautiful in the room to look at. You need someone to take the photos of it.
Yes.
You need, music to listen to and set the tone. My flowers can only be so good without, you guys and the
Rest in
other,
pieces.
vendors.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and I think that's the beauty of this industry is that, we're all in this together and, it takes a village to get one of these weddings
Yes.
done,
Yes.
So it's really beautiful.
Really well put, Andrew, because it does take a village, and that is one of the things that when there are about 15 to 17 on average vendors that go into a wedding, and so we don't envy the work that brides and grooms have to do to put a wedding together. But I will say, just as somebody who's been doing this for over 30 years, like who you bring together on that team, when you're bringing in professionals who have experience, that have worked with everybody and anybody, like that matters. We've worked so many times, I can't even imagine, probably thousands of times with Brian and his team, and Andrew and his team, and Matt and his, like that really matters because you just know what to expect, what the other person's going to do, and it just, it all comes together to one day.
Yeah.
It's not like you're planning a week or a month. You're putting this into one day, and you're spending a lot of money on it, and so that really, that's really important. So, that's a crazy question to ask.
We got a crazy question. Well, now you can't just say it. Now you
I
have
can't
to-
not ask
Now
it
you have,
now.
it's asking shit. So
It's kind of related to the Bridezilla one. So, have you ever wanted to drop a client mid-job? But it is live. We do have these questions.
man.
I mean,
do we blow up
I don't know.
spots?
I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know. I would just say, like, if somebody gets to that point where they're so upset about something, our reaction is going to be, okay, let's just kind of talk you down from this, and this is your wedding day. Like, that would not be ever in the equation. I just feel like you need to empathize and say, all right, so what is it that got this person so worked up?
Yeah.
And then,
well, I will say, from the DJ perspective at least, I'm not going to go into any specific stories, but alcohol can play a factor in the agreeability of a client
Fair.
midway through a wedding.
Fair.
So sometimes if their personality is changed slightly by consumption,
Outside substances.
outside
Yes.
influences,
Yes, influences.
sometimes they could be
Yes.
a little bit
Yes.
trickier to
Yes.
make happy by the end of the party.
Yes. Somebody's trying to catch us here, I think, and saying something.
Yeah, no. And you're not going to get through this armor. All right, we got
Yes.
some thick skin on
Yes,
this side
we're
of the
going,
table.
we
all
go
right?
live, but we
go live, but we
choose-
don't go dopey.
We don't go dopey. We don't go dopey. So, all right. So let's
But
go
yeah.
through. We got. I mean, we touched upon silk flowers. The family members who hate each other.
Yeah,
Crazy stuff. No,
I think we got through all of our
and honestly,
pre-asked
like
question
more live questions than we've ever had.
Yeah,
here.
every week it's become more, which
Yes.
is just a testament to this
Yes.
is working. Thank you
This
for
is working, and
liking
thank you.
us and
thank you
and
for liking us, and thank you for sharing
yeah,
us.
and being interested in what we're doing because
Yes.
this is a blast.
Yes,
Awesome.
we are, and we're getting heavy hitters here.
Listen, man, Andrew's
Thank you.
real.
I mean, Flowers by Brian. Come on, who's bigger in this industry?
His
you know?
last name is Flowers. He came over on the Mayflower
Flowers.
and planted a flower.
Right, exactly. I mean, where do you think it came from? Come on, literally, your last name Flowers. Like you
This
couldn't
is
make that up.
Pure Americana flowers.
Yes, yes. In fact, I don't know how you could have gone into another business. I mean, you couldn't open up like a body shop.
Right.
Seriously.
Yeah, listen.
You know, so all right, so like I think it's time for like that live pod promo, right?
Live pod promo.
Live pod promo. Okay, you
All
go
right.
first.
So, live pod promo. That big screen that I talked about last week, and 100 people asked me about this week. What I'd like to do is take $1,500 off of my price for my screen. If you want to add my DJ booth screen to your wedding, and you can call me by the next live pod.
By the next
so
live
next
pod.
Wednesday,
Next Wednesday.
whatever the date is, I don't know, the 29th, something like that. Yeah,
28th.
28th. If you can
Call
call
on
me by the
29th,
28th,
not gonna happen. Not gonna
and
happen.
you add it to your party, or you book a new party, and you're like, I gotta have that screen. It's $1,500 left. Functionally, I'm doing it at cost, cover my costs of my laborers and my guys to operate it, and your party will be that much cooler.
It is worth it. I mean,
Oh, it's
honestly,
sensational,
like,
yeah.
Like it is
Yeah.
definitely one of those.
No one's
things
gonna see
where-
it and be like, "Oh, how terrible is that?" Everybody's gonna be, "Wow,
Oh my goodness!
ooh and ah,
That
thanks
little
to
video
that."
wall you had, you know, like
And talking
yeah,
about the effect on the senses, that visual
Sure.
aspect of it.
yes.
Imagine a picture taken on a Silver Fox camera of a Flowers by Brian floral arrangement
Not with this camera here.
on a music boutique
camera.
6.5 foot tall screen.
What's better than that?
Can
What
you
is better
think
than
of a
that?
better situation?
I don't know. I don't know.
can't.
So,
But John,
all right, there you go. So,
balls in your court.
balls in my court because Andrew's going to go last here. So we
Live
had
pod promo.
Right, live pod promo. So we actually had such a good response from the last one. Last week was you booked photo and video, and you got a complimentary audio guest book, which are great
loves
for $75 value. We're going to do it again just because so many people were like, yeah, we want to do that. So if you book us for photo and video between now, what I have to say is we're not going to do it again next week because that's just lame.
Yeah,
But,
no,
you
you gotta
know,
think of something cool,
Like,
yeah.
exactly.
Like, for instance, how I thought of something totally different, and you did the same
Oh,
thing.
I just did it by because it was so in demand. that
It was, yeah, listen,
Yeah.
man, yeah.
So, look at him throwing shade at me. Like, literally. Like, he's my co-host.
There's
you know?
so much lights in here, so there's no shade.
$475 value, book us a photo and video, and you'll have a great audio guest book. We actually have an awesome booth that we're just finishing up that we're building another one. That's
Spilling
terrific.
the
If you like to
beans. The
upgrade
booth
and
is
do
cool.
that, it's a lot of fun. So, yes, but really, I will turn to Andrew here for the big announcement. I mean, I think it's very, very generous.
Live pod
for
promo.
all of our first-time brides coming in for their first appointment this week. Any brides who just mention Ask Us Shit at the front desk when they first come in or on the phone, they'll get 10% off their order with us. Yeah, it's pretty nice.
10% is big money.
Big money.
So
Listen,
what happens if they
Yeah.
come in and they're
90%
like,
off.
what happens if they just come in and they're like, hey, I just want to ask you some shit, but you're like, are you gonna be like, hey, was that from the podcast? For some people, it's like,
What'd you say that for?
Yeah,
Why
right,
did you
right.
say? Why do you want to
Oh,
ask
it's gonna be a
us?
confusing week.
Yeah, it's a good
A
problem.
lot
to
of people
have.
start the conversations like that most of
Almost
the time.
every single one.
Everything.
Oh
Yes.
yeah.
I want to ask you some shit.
Hey, I'm here to just ask you some shit about flowers.
Ask some shit about flowers,
You know,
yeah.
like, can
See
you
the
tell
flower
me
guy want to talk some shit about flowers?
Yeah, so, well, we went 48 minutes. Like, this is turning almost into an hour, you know?
Well, it's
Every
really
time.
fun.
It is
so,
really
yeah,
fun.
And,
This is great.
when you get quality people, I mean, Andrew,
you.
thank you so much
Yes.
for being here. This was
Aw,
so
thank you
cool
for having me.
that you
Yes.
made the trip out to our little slice of heaven here.
Little slice of heaven, our
Yeah.
little set
I love
here.
it.
We're gonna have a little espresso afterwards, and
Yeah.
so tune in next week. We've already got guests lined up till I think we're until
Middle of July. Middle of July,
Yes.
we have guests
Yes.
lined up. People have been asking and being invited,
Yes.
and it's really great.
We've got. I want to tease out names, but I will tease out that we are going live on location in a couple of weeks to it's gonna be pretty cool.
It's
I don't know
gonna be
how
fun.
we're gonna do all this, but we'll figure
figure it out.
We'll
Yeah,
figure
we'll
it
figure it
out.
out.
But yes,
Yeah.
we'll be taking the pod on the road.
We might have it might
Yeah,
be
it might
selfie
just
mode.
be
Right,
a
just
lot
me
of
and him
this,
holding
but
some phones.
it'll still be fun. You'll still be able to ask us shit. But thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you,
TikTok.
thank
I feel
you.
like TikTok sometimes doesn't get enough love.
TikTok.
We're over here. They're like seeing our profiles. We
Yeah.
love you, TikTok.
That's the
we
luckiest
really
shot in
do.
the building. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
You're kind of almost seeing behind the scenes here. But thank you all for tuning in. This will be posted immediately, and then it gets cut up into like a couple of sections,
Highlights.
so you kind of watch it. Highlights. Definitely tune in for that. Ask us shit. Andrew, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
in.
Thank
Absolutely.
you guys for having me.
And
Thank you.
we will see all of you next week. Everybody have a great evening.
Next week.
Now let's turn all this shit off.
Yeah. Turn off the shit. Yeah.